that's always been like, oh, I'm terrible at that. I'm really good at telling other people to do it. I will say I'm getting better. And like, I really do believe people are brought into your life for a reason. And, you know, I will say one interesting thing is my husband, Matt, we're so different when it comes to drive. And he's like, he needed a fire under his butt, and I need the fire dimmed down under my butt. And I think that's what we brought in his life. So I will say I've learned more from, you know, living with him and that relationship. I have learned more how to care for myself. I think the other thing is Charlie is my son, who's 20 months old. I had him later on in life, and he has also helped me start focusing. And it's been hard. Like I feel the mental struggle sometimes of like turning off and being present and like, and being as present there. But I think this combination has really made me reprioritize and like want the like be okay with just like sitting on the floor playing and for like an hour and really enjoying that. So I think these other influences in my life have helped me. It definitely, I will say that's a weakness of mine. It definitely hasn't been internal. It's been from other things outside helping me get there.
How about the experience of being rejected in business? Has this ever happened to you? And if so, what did you do to manage that emotionally?
Yeah. So I think, you know, I've had like, it's interesting because I had these early successes, like again, Equilibria Psych really organically grew, and it became a very successful business despite some of the things that despite some of my poor leadership mistakes. There's that. And poor choices I made. But I think that was an early success. And I think, and I'm going to answer your question about rejection. And I think like having a book published like that, and finding an agent, like that doesn't happen. That's usually a much harder process. It happened to be just good timing. It was a topic that was it was becoming hot. And so it was the timing. It wasn't me. It was the timing. But I think because I had that, the rejection parts felt deeper. So I'm like, it's supposed to all work out, right? So, you know, yeah, I've had plenty of rejections. I think growing Equilibria leadership has been really, really, really hard. And I think the rejections are a long fall there because you work so hard to get the business. And then if it doesn't pan out or the client goes to someone else, it's like a real stab in the gut because put so much into that relationship. Take Kiddo, talking about like startup and that entrepreneurial game, like that's rejection and failure constant. Like it is. But I do feel like over the years, I've developed a little bit of an iron gut for it. And I've also really worked on my mindset around it. Like I don't see rejection as failure. I really just see it as information. So I've really worked at having a very tough mindset around that because I can't, I think if anyone goes there with the ups and downs and rejection, because that's just part of business. It's part of leadership. It's part of taking risk. Like you're going to fall and you're going to fall on your face hard sometimes.
So for our young listeners, you would say in terms of rejection in business, it's normal. It's going to happen. Yeah. And what other sort of action steps can you give them to kind of work through that?
Well, I think it's a lot about reframing. Again, if you're going to associate rejection with failure and you have a really negative association or relationship with failure, it's going to take a lot of emotional energy from you. If you can reframe it as information, for what's working and what's not, and you can also kind of look at it as really useful feedback, probably the most useful feedback to help you think deeper, to think more strategically, to really work through, okay, why is this happening? How is this happening? What did I do to contribute this? It creates this like amazing relationship with the crap part of business, the negative side of business. Like it becomes like, I actually really like it becomes this fuel for not only your personal self-awareness, but the self-awareness that's required when creating a business or creating a product. you require the feedback is imperative. So I think it's adjusting your relationship and how you see it. This stuff is so useful.
And using it more as information to build on your next success step to be successful, as opposed to seeing it as really undermining your ability to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we're surrounded by all of this. We're surrounded by feedback constantly, not just verbal feedback, but just like how people relate to us, customers choose to be with us, choose not to be with us, fundraising rejections, all that stuff gives us such vital information to adjust and to mold and evolve. And like the cool thing is we get to evolve until we die. So if you're not evolving, you're dead. So like, again, this is so useful in growth, and entrepreneurship is not for everyone. This is a hard journey. It's a constant look in the mirror. It's constantly, I find you have to keep your emotions in check and constantly look at it with a lens of self-awareness.
So let's talk about emotions in check. How have you ever faced business decisions where maybe you were too emotional?
Oh my God.
However, how did you face this, and what did you learn from the situation and maybe brought forward in your recent business decisions?
Well, I think the best example for my personal experience happened with Equilibria Psychological. So when I first started growing that business into a group practice, I think people in my field, like psychology, I think it can be kind of weird. So I didn't want to work with weird people. Like I wanted to bring in people that were down to earth and cool and all that. So I brought in my friends who were therapists that wanted to start building their own practices. And that was great. Like the positive side of that was that we all love each other so much. So the cultural thing, like you, as a client, you would walk in there and like, you would feel the love. Like it was, and people were really down to earth, and it was fun. It was great. The bad part about it is when you're, I was the owner of the business. Like it was my butt on the line. And I was making decisions based on my relationships and my emotions and feelings for people versus logical, thoughtful decisions that would help the business thrive. Because if the business thrives, the people thrive. So like I did stupid things like, once we got on insurance panels, because again, this is in the city in Philly, like it's a big enough practice. We had to start getting on insurance panels. I would pay my therapist regardless of if I got paid or not. So what that means is that all of a sudden, like, that sometimes therapists wouldn't collect co-pays because they felt bad, or wouldn't write their notes on time. And so we couldn't submit, like, and then all of a sudden it was too late and insurance companies wouldn't pay. Like, you don't do that. That's a terrible, stupid thing to do.
Right.
And so I was finding myself, like I was making these decisions that were emotional based on what I thought people wanted. And meanwhile, I was losing it. I was like, again, I hated the business. I hated it. I found it to be a burden. I started resenting all my friends that were working there because they were perfectly fine, while I was like, oh my God, where am I going to get the money to pay the bills? It was just so illogical. So it was totally based in emotion. And it was funny because I built it up in my head. Eventually I changed that model, but I built up in my head that it was going to be the biggest thing in the world. Like when I did it, they were like, why didn't you do this years ago? What's your problem? Like, that was so dumb. Like, okay, thank you. So what I've had to do, so there's examples of that. There's also examples of not firing people well past their expiration point, like when they just weren't a fit, but, feeling bad that there were like, having family problems or this or that. Like, I've just always let in the past emotion get in the way. And I do sometimes now, or my, wanting to take care of people. Like, I'm definitely a nurturer. So I have to be so, like today, I have to be so prudent, so careful that when I start feeling that creep up, because I being aware of it, I now know the red flags that happen in my brain and my body when it's starting to creep in that direction. So I just have to pay such vigilant attention to when that's starting to happen, because it always leads to a really bad business decision. So I just have to be vigilant.
Thank you very much. Believe it or not, we're coming to the end of our podcast, but lots of great personal stories and also inspirational sort of journeys to share with our listeners. I want to thank you very much for coming on today, and wish you lots of luck in all of your new inspirational journey adventures. Can you tell me where people can reach out to you if they want to learn more about your work?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So you can email me. You can go to actually the websites to email. That would be easiest. So you can either go to www.hey-kiddo.com. That's HEY-kiddo.com, or Equilibria Leadership, which is EQUILIBRIA leadership.com. And I answer the emails on the contact us form.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicole.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
This podcast is brought to you by Women Entrepreneurs Global, the first startup studio and digital DIY startup platform for women. For more information on her guests, this podcast, and many other female founder programs, please visit womenentrepreneurs.global. We believe in open and non-stigmatizing dialogue about the hidden psychological difficulties experienced by many successful entrepreneurs and highlighting the strategies used to overcome them, such as the fear of failure, of not being good enough, and that loud, chattering internal critic is critical to helping other founders achieve success. Please join her next week for more Mindset for Success stories. That was Dr. Leslie Knudsen, and you can drop her a line at dr.leslieKnudsen@dr.leslieKnudsen.com.